Hello, I'm Maurice Bernard. This is my official YouTube channel. I'll be keeping you updated with the latest news, so please subscribe to my channel. What truly caught my attention is that the show has now fully confirmed that Dante is covering for Rocco. For weeks, many viewers suspected it, but there was still room to believe that Dante might somehow find a legal way out or that the writers would soften the situation before it became irreversible. Instead, the story has gone in the exact opposite direction. Dante crossed the line knowingly. He destroyed evidence, manipulated the truth, and abused his authority. No matter how noble his intentions may appear as a father trying to protect his son, the truth remains uncomfortable. Dante became the very kind of cop he once despised. That is what makes this storyline so powerful to me. In earlier years, Dante represented discipline and integrity. He was often the moral balance inside the chaos of Port Charles. Even when Sonny operated in the gray areas of the law, Dante usually stood firm in his own principles. But now the writers are forcing us to confront a painful possibility. Perhaps Dante was always more like Sonny than he wanted to admit. When fear entered the picture, when Rocco's life became threatened, Dante abandoned the badge emotionally before he abandoned it professionally. I think many longtime viewers over 60 like myself understand exactly why this storyline feels different. At our age, we understand that life is rarely black and white. We know that parents make impossible choices. We understand desperation. If my own child were facing prison or death, would I make the same choices Dante made? That is the dangerous question this storyline forces the audience to ask. The show is not presenting Dante as a cartoon villain. It is presenting him as a frightened father losing control of his moral compass, one decision at a time. But here is where things become truly explosive. Joe has entered this storyline like a storm cloud, slowly swallowing the entire city. At first, I believe Joe would simply become another temporary detective character whose purpose was to push the investigation forward. Instead, the writers have transformed him into something much more dangerous. Joe represents the cold, unforgiving side of justice that Dante can no longer escape. Every scene between them now carries tension beneath the dialogue. Joe looks at Dante not like a respected superior, but like a compromised man already guilty in his eyes. What makes Joe especially interesting is that he does not behave emotionally. He behaves methodically. That is far more threatening. A furious enemy can make mistakes, but a patient investigator is terrifying. Joe is watching everything carefully. He notices the inconsistencies. He notices Dante's hesitation. He notices the way Rocco behaves whenever the incident is mentioned. Most importantly, Joe seems personally offended by corruption inside the PCPD. That detail matters tremendously because it changes this story from a family scandal into an institutional crisis. I believe the writers are intentionally building Joe into the public face of accountability. In many older soap storylines, corruption was often hidden behind romance or mob drama. Here, the corruption is becoming the center of the emotional conflict itself. Joe is no longer simply investigating a shooting. He is investigating the collapse of trust within the police department. Once that happens, Dante's situation becomes nearly impossible to contain. And honestly, I think Dante already knows that deep down. One thing I have noticed in recent episodes is how exhausted Dante looks emotionally. He is constantly trying to control every variable around him. He is protecting Rocco, managing suspicion, handling pressure at the PCPD, and now dealing with Joe's relentless scrutiny. A man can only carry that weight for so long before cracks begin to appear. The writers are doing an excellent job showing that guilt is beginning to consume him from the inside. What truly shocked me was a suggestion that Joe may accuse Dante of accepting bribes. That possibility changes everything because it destroys Dante's ability to defend himself morally. Covering for a son out of fear is one thing. Being accused of corruption for personal gain is another. Even if the bribery accusation turns out to be exaggerated or partially manipulated, the damage to Dante's reputation may already be irreversible. In the public eye, perception becomes reality very quickly. I can already imagine how devastating it would be if Dante were officially fired from the PCPD. For longtime viewers, that would feel symbolic. Dante losing his badge would represent the destruction of the identity he spent years building. The tragedy here is not simply losing a job. It is losing the belief that he was different from the darker influences surrounding him his entire life. And let us talk honestly about Rocco for a moment, because I think some viewers are missing the deeper emotional layer of this story. Rocco is not simply a frightened teenager caught in a terrible situation. He is becoming psychologically trapped by the lies protecting him. That is the true horror of this storyline. Dante thinks he is saving his son, but he may actually be damaging him permanently. Children carry guilt differently than adults. Rocco now lives every day knowing his father destroyed evidence to protect him. Imagine the emotional burden of that knowledge. Imagine waking up each morning knowing your father sacrificed his integrity because of your actions. This is where I believe the storyline becomes almost Shakespearean in nature. Dante's love for Rocco is genuine, but that love is poisoning both of them. The more Dante protects him, the more isolated they become emotionally. Secrets create distance even between family members who desperately love one another. I suspect future episodes will show Rocco slowly unraveling under the pressure. Fear has a way of turning inward over time. Another aspect I find fascinating is how the PCPD itself is being portrayed almost like a crumbling institution. For years on this show, the department has survived scandals, mob influence, betrayals, and corruption. But this storyline feels more personal because Dante was supposed to represent stability. If even Dante can fall, then what confidence remains in the system? Joe seems determined to expose that exact truth. At the same time, I cannot fully trust Joe either, and I think the writers want us to feel uneasy about him. There is something almost obsessive in the way he pursues Dante. Yes, his anger may be justified, but sometimes his reactions feel too intense, too emotionally invested. That raises an important question. Is Joe truly pursuing justice, or is he using Dante's weakness for his own ambitions? Soap operas thrive on hidden motives, and I would not be surprised at all if Joe has secrets that eventually surface. There are even moments when I wonder whether Joe enjoys watching Dante collapse psychologically. Some people are addicted not to justice itself, but to power over others. Joe now holds enormous power because he controls information, suspicion, and investigation. He can destroy Dante's career almost whenever he chooses. That kind of power changes people. If the writers are smart, they will blur the moral line between Joe and Dante even further in the coming weeks. I also think this storyline works because it touches something deeply human for older viewers like myself. We understand regret. We understand how one decision can reshape an entire life. Younger audiences may focus on the suspense of the investigation, but viewers my age often focus on consequences. We know that damage inside a family does not disappear overnight. Even if Dante escapes prison, even if Rocco avoids legal punishment, the emotional scars may last forever. One thing I especially appreciate is that the story does not rely entirely on action. The tension comes from silence, suspicion, and emotional discomfort. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen when characters say very little. A nervous glance, a delayed answer, or a sudden change in tone can carry enormous weight. That style of storytelling reminds me of classic eras of daytime television when emotional tension mattered more than spectacle. I also believe the writers are carefully preparing Dante for a complete personal collapse. Losing his position at the PCPD may only be the beginning. Once accusations of bribery spread publicly, everyone around him may begin questioning his integrity. Friends could distance themselves. Colleagues could turn against him. Even those who sympathize with his motives may no longer trust his judgment. That isolation could push Dante into darker emotional territory than we have ever seen before. And what happens if Rocco finally breaks under the guilt and confesses everything himself? That possibility keeps lingering in my mind. In many ways, Rocco may ultimately become the person who destroys the cover-up, not because he wants to betray Dante, but because he can no longer live with the emotional pressure. Teenagers are rarely equipped to carry secrets of this magnitude forever. There is also the possibility that Joe deliberately pressures Rocco psychologically in order to force a confession. If that happens, the audience may become divided over whether Joe is acting heroically or cruelly. That is exactly the kind of moral complexity that keeps longtime viewers emotionally invested. What excites me most is that this storyline still feels unpredictable. Too many modern soap stories reveal their ending too early. Here, however, several paths remain possible. Dante could lose everything. Joe could expose hidden corruption. Rocco could confess unexpectedly. Someone else could manipulate the evidence entirely. Even the bribery accusations may lead toward a much larger conspiracy inside Port Charles. As someone who has watched the show for decades, I genuinely believe this is one of the stronger emotional arcs the writers have produced recently. It combines family tragedy, legal corruption, psychological pressure, and moral ambiguity in a way that feels emotionally mature rather than sensational. The story understands that the most devastating battles are often internal ones. At the center of it all stands Dante, a man trying desperately to save his son while slowly destroying himself. That contradiction is what makes this storyline unforgettable to me. I do not hate Dante for what he has done, but I cannot defend him either. That uncomfortable emotional conflict is precisely why I continue watching General Hospital after all these years. The show still knows how to make viewers wrestle with difficult questions about loyalty, morality, and sacrifice. And right now, it truly feels as though poor Charles is standing on the edge of something explosive. One confession, one missing piece of evidence, or one emotional breakdown could ignite the entire city. That tension is exactly what keeps me coming back every single week, still emotionally invested after all these years, still wondering how far these characters will go before the truth finally destroys them all. Thank you for watching my video. I will regularly update you with the latest news about the drama General Hospital, so please stay tuned.